You weren't live yet, I don't think.
Oh, we've been live this whole time, just not recorded.
Oh, okay. Good. You know what happened though, right?
No.
They started her community center on fire.
Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. To be continued. Good afternoon, everyone. It's May 10th, 2021, and I call this meeting to order. This is the Finance and Government Operations Committee of the City Council. Councillor Harris is excused from today's meeting, and all other committee members are present today via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on video or audio conference. We're holding this meeting remotely so that everyone can participate safely while we conduct business under the public health emergency. We appreciate your patience as FGO meetings are conducted this way. Written comments were received for today's meeting and were provided to members of the committee. Members of the public were given the opportunity to address the committee with live comments if they signed up per the instructions published on the agenda and on our website Friday, but I understand there are none signed up for today's meeting. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube and Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. We are going to move on to agenda item A, EC 320, is Early Head Start Quarterly Report, January, February, and March 2021. I move a receipt be noted. And I see Councillor Sena with a second. Thank you so much. Councillors, any questions? And Ms. Hinojos, if you want to take a vote, please.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item B, EC 321, is approval of the FY20 audit. I move a receipt be noted. Councillor Pena, thank you for a second. Any questions or comments for the administration, councillors? Okay. Ms. Hinojos.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item C, EC 322 is a lease agreement between MW Development LLC and the City of Albuquerque. I move approval. Councillor Sena, thank you for the second. Any questions, councillors? Comments? Anything from the administration? You good?
Hello, Madam Chair. Thank you. Yeah, we're just going to request immediate action on this. So I just wanted to be ready after it passed.
Thank you. So Ms. Hinojos, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. I believe we will go and see if we can have a motion. I'll make a motion for immediate action. Councillor Sena, thank you so much. Ms. Hinojos.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
We'll move on to agenda item D, EC 323 is building lease and agreement between the City of Albuquerque and 10 Tanker Air Carrier. I move approval. Councillor Sena with a second. Thank you so much. Councillors, any questions or comments? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Councillor Borrego.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Moving on to agenda item E. EC 332 is revenue and expense report for second quarter fiscal year 2021. I move a receipt be noted. Counselor,
Second.
thank you. Counselor Senna, Bassan, or Borrego and Pena. Any questions, counselors? Okay, Missy Nojos.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Senna.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Agenda item F is sponsored by Counselor Benton and Gibson. I will go ahead and move this. It's O59, amending Chapter 14, Article 7, Part 2, Section 1, Paragraph B of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1994, the Professional Services Ordinance. I move a do pass.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Borrego. Mr. Menicucci, did you have anything you want to summarize and add?
Council, just basically what this is, just takes the council right now receives through RFP, its engineering and professional services agreement. That's the standard by which such agreements are done, so as to make sure you get a quality agreement with the best firm to do the work. However, to do so requires a bit of time. It takes about 6-7 months to get that through that process because there's a lot of evaluation that has to be done. These are complex contracts. So when you have small projects, that usually doesn't require that much evaluation. You usually, so there's an exemption there. It says if it's under 25,000, you can go ahead and go ahead and just go through 3 quotes or follow the regular purchasing ordinance. That was set, we don't know, we estimated decades ago, back in the 80s, we think. And so price inflation has gone up since then. So there's hardly any work that can be done at that price. So nowadays, small contracts are usually in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, oftentimes. So what this does, just ups it to that price. That will allow it allows for a little bit more work to be done in the planning process without having to involve the engineers. It also doesn't take time for small contracts in the SAC process, which has a lot of work to do. And also we've been using a lot of small work on the on-call contracts, but the on-call contracts, these small jobs can eat up their quantities. So those are usually for medium-sized work. Also, on-call contracts are usually for categories of work, whereas sometimes your small projects are very specific. So this will allow us to go out to the regular purchasing ordinance request for quotes process to get smaller work done, architecture and engineering contracts done. We brought it to 100,000 originally because that's what the price inflation rate has been since 1980s. Then we upped it a little bit more because when we looked at other small contracts that have been done, they've been running between about 100 to they've been going up to about 130,000. So we upped, and that's the one reason we brought it to 150. Also because we know it usually takes a little bit of an effort to amend an ordinance and inflation's ongoing. So this gives us a little bit of a buffer.
Thank you, Mr. Menicucci. Any questions, counselors? As with anything, I think it makes sense to update after a few decades. Missy Nojos, if you will please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Senna.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item G. Counselor Pena.
Madam Chair, can you read it for me? It's not pulling up on my,
Of course.
thank you.
O61 is amending the City of Albuquerque Charter, Article 13, repealing voter ID requirements for municipal elections. It was saying move a do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd like to move a do pass. This was actually, I think it was by request, but if not, I mean, I would sponsor it as well as just removing some of the requirements that, do we have staff here who could explain this bill a little bit?
And for
Or
See that Counselor Senna to give us
Mr. Watson, Director Watson, thank you.
Sorry, who's next? I apologize. Is it Counselor Center or is it me?
No, thank you. So Counselor Sena offered a second for this, and then Director Watson, if you want to go ahead, and Mr. Watson.
Yes, thank you, members of the committee and Madam Chairwoman. There has been some confusion around this voter identification requirement in our charter. It is no longer in effect as a result of the cities opting into the Local Election Act, and because our elections are now or the process of voting is now managed by the county, and as a result, state law regarding voter identification applies. Because of the confusion and questions we've been getting from voters and candidates alike, we thought it best to clarify that this was no longer in effect by removing it from our charter.
Thank you. Counselors, any follow-up questions? Counselor Pena to close.
I urge your support. Thank you.
Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. I don't see anything on here for anything speeding this along, Mr. Watson. Is that okay?
I don't know the answer to that question. I apologize.
Okay. I just wasn't sure about immediate action or anything, if that was necessary.
Looks like someone's from the mayor's conference room. I'd move immediate action. I don't see so I'd move immediate action.
Our election is coming up pretty quickly and we are getting questions about this.
Oh, go ahead, Counselor Sena.
Okay, so Counselor Pena is moving immediate action. Counselor Sena, is that a second? Thank you. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item H. R131 is Counselor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. R131 is a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 376 Dolores Drive Northwest within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico, so ruined, damaged, or dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that is to be required to be removed. I move a due pass.
I see Counselor Pena with a second.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt, but we do have somebody that's an attendee, and I'm not sure if they're here for one of these nuisance abatement bills. Do you mind if I just allow them to speak real quick so we can get a sense of if they're here for one of these bills? I just want to make sure.
That's fine,
Don't
Mr.
miss them.
Thank you.
Hello, somebody on the Moto G7 device. Can you just identify yourselves and let us know which bill you're here for, if you're here to speak on one?
Yes, I am William David Waterman. I am here in regard to 6816 Ina Drive Northeast.
Great.
R-21-152. I sent an email to Mr. D.E. Gonzalez in Code Enforcement and an email to Cynthia Borrego concerning the issues surrounding that property. We definitely do not want to lose our home, and we don't want to live next door to the people that threatened us all the time with beatings and everything else. So we do have a plan.
Thank you, sir. Your bill is still upcoming on the agenda, but I've noted your appearance here, and I will let you back in to speak when your item is up, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will let him in when his bill comes up.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe Mr. Metzger is here with planning to give us an update on this property. I'm hearing it's very promising.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is correct. This property is about 95% brought into compliance. We're expecting that to happen within the next month. I would request that we go ahead and defer this till the next FGO meeting to ensure that everything gets completed and we can withdraw it once it does fully come into compliance.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'm going to move for a deferral till the June 14th FGO meeting.
Second,
Okay, so Counselor Sana moves for a deferral and then Counselor Borrego with a second. Ms. Hinojos?
Counselor Borrego,
yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are going to move on to agenda item I is R151. Counselor Peña, this is you. Do you have that available?
I do. It finally came up. So, okay, R21-151, approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a grant agreement with the U.S. Department Health and Human Services Early Head Start Program and providing an appropriation to the Department of Family and Community Services beginning fiscal year 2022. I move a do pass.
Second,
Counselor Sana with the second and Counselor Borrego, thank you. Any comments, counselors, questions? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
yes.
Counselor Peña,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
We will now move on to agenda item J is R152, a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 6816 Ina Drive Northeast, 87109. Within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico is ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. I move a do pass.
Second,
Thank you, Councilor Borrego. Mr. Metzger, do you have an update for this property, please?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, the owners reached out and indicated that he wanted to remove the trailer that's on there now and sell the lot. I would recommend that because this property has been posted for 9 years, I think we should go ahead and move it forward to full council where it can be deferred at that point. We can give the owner time to start getting things together and kind of have sort of a deadline for him to produce some sort of plan to get this moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Just for clarification, you did say that code enforcement has been working for 9 years on this property, correct?
Correct.
I will stick with your recommendation, sir. Any
Madam
questions?
Chair, Madam Chair, just wanted to remind everybody that Mr. Waterman is on the line if there were questions for him.
Okay, Mr. Waterman, would you like to go ahead and speak on behalf of this property?
Yes, we had 3 different families in the neighborhood for a while. 2 were dealing drugs. 1 was just robbing and doing a lot of damage. My wife's in a wheelchair. She was literally terrorized to the point where she declared she never wanted to live in the same area as those people again. One couple immediately next door who happened to still be there. And at that point, her health was in decline. And we did leave it sit for a while because we were literally battling for her life. She nearly passed away 4 times in the last 3 years, twice the year before. And she's wheelchair bound 44 years. And we were in the process and had permitted and acquired all the engineer's statements, engineered stamp drawings, everything to completely make it into wheelchair accessible. But my wife absolutely will not. I mean, at this point, we actually have a way to finance it and finish it off, but she just absolutely will not live next door to the 2 people immediately to the west anymore. After he came and threatened us with a piece of pipe and said he was going to beat me unconscious or to death, and witnessed by many people. The police have been very helpful, but the fact is that we had an element move in that for years I had lived there since 2004. It had been nice and quiet, a very beautiful neighborhood. and elderly people passed away and they were replaced by people that were not so nice. And at this point, we actually had planned on moving it to Rio Rancho and going ahead. The engineers are willing to duplicate the drawings and requalify everything so I can pass inspections in Rio Rancho. Engineer described the house as structurally sound. It just needed to be finished. He was actually contracted with the city at one time. There is no question that it can be made into a nice place. There was just one development came up this past week. There's a family we know in a church that I'm affiliated with. Their house burned to the ground, and it happened to be a mobile home, and they have no way to replace it. And I was just on the phone. So the gentleman's offer to give us some time to come together with a plan is wonderful, because we may actually, instead of rebuilding it for ourselves, move it down to Los Lunas, set it up for this family that just lost their home. They're literally sleeping on the ground under a tent and a pickup topper and an old beat up camper. So one way or another, we're moving it. We have a written offer from a real estate broker for the lot, and everything is going to happen. I actually have an estate lawyer that is looking at the real estate broker's paperwork, attorney John Sondogger. So honestly, for 6 years, I didn't know whether my wife was going to live through the next month, let alone long enough to move her back into a home. But we are paying 2/3 of our gross income for rent and utilities. It leaves us about $300 a month for groceries, gasoline, medicines, whatever else. And it's just not possible to continue. We have a lot of support from Hoffmantown Church, where we attend, First Baptist, where I've been a pastor in the past, Los Lunas First Baptist, and Rio Rancho. So it's not a lack of help. And we've got a lot of good friends that are contractors. It is a matter of, one issue came up just day before yesterday. A surveyor said, I need more time, because we need to have the lot we're buying in Rio Rancho surveyed, boundaries marked, and I need to get together with the city of Rio Rancho for the necessary permits. I already got part of them, the applications, and talked to the building department. But it is this stuff with permitting and moving and things like that will take time. But
yes, sir. I'm so sorry for your struggles, but I want to make sure to get the counselor's questions about this as well. I, again, cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through, and I apologize on behalf of all of the negativity. So we don't want to leave you without a home, but 9 years is a long time. So I would like to hear from Counselor Pena, questions, and then we will see about more discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Metzger, so I'm a little confused. The write-up here says that it was Raul and Elsa Camarena, who are the owners of the property?
That is the, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Councilor Pena, that is the next item on the agenda.
But they're actually, oh, this is a different one. This is Ina Drive Northeast. Okay, I'm sorry. So, because you had said that there was a couple of properties. So is this a mobile home?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And so the property that you're on right now currently is your property?
I am buying a contract for deed from Thomas R. House, and I have a contract for deed for the property. So the offer from the real estate broker is actually to both of us, Thomas R. House and myself, because we're just going to split the equity. But we do have a written offer. It's a fair offer, and it solves the problem of doing something where my wife is comfortable, because as I said, she just will not live in that neighborhood anymore.
Counselor Borrego, or Counselor Pena, do you have a follow-up?
Not really. I mean, it's just confusing because then we knocked down the mobile home, which is owned by a separate individual than the one who owns the property, right? And so if the property is in disrepair and they're leasing the property, shouldn't the landlord be responsible for some maintenance of the property?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, for Mr. Metzger, I'm sorry, sir. I'm just trying to work this all out in my head.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Yes, Mr. Metzger, if you can please respond to that question, that would be great.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, this, the gentleman owns both the trailer and the lot.
Under contract though, so he technically because he said he's under contract.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, this is news to us. It does come up in his name through Bernalillo County Assessor's data.
Okay, because then he stated that he's paying rent and utilities. So that's why.
No. I'm not paying rent and utilities for the house at Ina. I'm paying rent and utilities at 10300 Golf Course Road Northwest, where we're living in an apartment that is more than we can afford right now. We're paying rent because we want to get back into our own home.
Okay, I was just trying to get clarity. I got a little lost in the, so that's where you're paying rent now, but you actually own the property.
I am contract for deed buyer of the property at 6816 Ina Drive, Northeast. The contract was drawn up in January of 2008, and it is still in effect. And as I said, I have equity now, and the seller that I'm buying it from also has an unpaid balance, and a real estate broker offered to buy it. And it's like, great, we'll have the money with our equity to go and actually have a home, move it somewhere else and set it up and live in it, or donate it to this family if they do need it, and then we'll buy a different one. But in a nutshell, it's a solution. We get at least something back out of the many tens of thousands I spent my inheritance on things. I paid engineers. I mean, and you say, yeah, it's sat for 9 years. For 6 years, every time I went over there, I was accosted by certain gentlemen, I'll call them loosely, on the street.
Yes. Well, Madam
that
Chair,
lived in the neighborhood, and the police can't get there right away to protect you, and they can't be there all the time while you're working on your home.
yes,
So
sir. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Madam Chair, if I can just one little follow up with Mr. Metzger. Mr. Metzger, if you can, I don't know what the intention of whose district this is in and what to do with it, but if we can get okay. Just a little more clarity on property ownership.
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, the assessor's data is what we go by through the ordinance, and it is stating that this gentleman is the owner of the property.
Okay.
Thank you. I do have my own, I have a couple questions as well regarding this. So, Mr. Metzger, what is the lien amount on this property total?
Madam Chair, the lien amount is about $1,500.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I still have questions. I just lowered my hand because I thought you were to call on me next.
I'm sorry, I saw your hand lowered. If we can all keep our hands up, then I'll get straight. Thank you so much. Madam President, go ahead.
I wanted to ask this gentleman a couple of questions about his timeline for, okay, well, first of all, I have a question about the mobile home, because the mobile home, the longer you leave it there and the longer it's been there, the harder it is to move. And I just wonder, have you had any sort of assessment in terms of how movable, I guess, the mobile home actually is? Because I know that sometimes the older a mobile home is, the harder it is to move. So, and you said that you would either move it to, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is that you said you would either move it to Rio Rancho or give it to this family that lived out of this city. So I'm just wondering, how old is this mobile home and what are the true possibilities of it being moved?
I just talked to Coyote Mobile Home Moving. It's very movable. He said the only question he had was whether that, when it was originally set down, if the hitch was cut off of it or unbolted, and that I honestly didn't know. He gave us a price based on what we know about it. Specifically, it's full dimension lumber. The house was originally built to be placed in what is called the hurricane belt within 300 miles of the coast of the Gulf, for those areas where winds are extremely high. So it is not mobile home framing. The floor joists are 2x10. That's not very common that you find that kind of strength or size of lumber in the floors. They're 16-inch on center instead of 24. The walls are 16 and they're full 2x4 dimension. The roof is trusses, not bow trusses, but actual scissors trusses with a cathedral ceiling. I had placed a new roof on it, completely new roof, which I did permit, by the way, and it is steel. It's got the axles under it yet. The frame is not warped or bent. It is very easily moved. The only thing the mobile home mover said was that I would have to disconnect the front and the back porches, detach them so he could slide the house out, and then we would trailer them out on a smaller flatbed. But there isn't really an issue with moving it. It's a very solid house. I wouldn't have, quite honestly, I wouldn't have invested in the process I did if I didn't think it was. I've been building since I was 15. I'm 63. I wasn't known as a sloppy builder. I would not invest in it if I didn't think it was a solid structure in it. Mr. Padilla, who is a contractor at one time with the city of Albuquerque, was sent out by code enforcement, and he declared it was structurally sound, and that that wasn't that long ago, actually 6 or 7 years ago. But that house has not been, what shall we say, subject to the normal weathering, except for the fact that recently these same neighbors that were causing trouble broke windows and started stealing, at which point the police department came and they requested that it be fenced off to keep the thieves out, which actually is great. And we're very happy. So at this point, it's very movable.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Councilor, Madam Chair, just a follow-up question. And actually, thank you for that. That was very detailed. It tells me that it's probably movable. It tells me that you haven't determined if there's a hitch yet, which I guess you can.
There is a hitch. There is a hitch. It's laying on the ground under the house. They normally detach them and put them underneath.
Okay.
All it's going to do is change the cost
without
of
getting
moving.
into too much more detail, sir, because we do have a lot of other cases to talk about. But let me ask you this follow-up question. It seems like you've done some assessment in terms of trying to move this property and finding other properties, and looking at viable properties to move to. The question in my mind is, what could possibly be, because 9 years is a long time, what could possibly be your timeline to move, to actually make this a reality? What would what is your estimated?
We would love to have it moved within 45 days. Our surveyor, we have Jeff Rose, EXP Realty is negotiating on some property in Rio Rancho for us. happens to be a member of our church. It's great to be in a good church. Anyway, the surveyor said that he might need a little more time. He said he's literally buried. And I talked to 9 different surveyors this past week. I couldn't believe it. They're all just swamped. And their timeline is, he said it could be weeks. And we got to have at least the corners of the property clearly marked, so we're not encroaching on a neighbor. And that is the only issue that I encountered that would be a delay, is that surveyor's time. And I did talk to 2 others in case he can't come through, but they're all,
Okay.
well, you know the drill. They're all backed up.
Interrupting you, but Mr. Waterman, we do need to stay very on point with everything. So we hear what you're saying. You said about 45 days. It could take longer. Let's hope that that does happen. It's my understanding from what we have learned from code enforcement, there may be some, Mr. Metzger, one more question that I have is, does code enforcement say that this is an inhabitable building?
Not at this time.
Not at this,
Metzger.
Madam Chair, not at this time. It isn't habitable. That's why it is posted substandard and has been in this condition for the last 9 years.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Metzger. I'm going to still move that this go to full council, at which point we can get an update from the planning department and we can decide whether or not we do need to defer. This is what code enforcement is recommending, and I am going to say that I still follow that. So I would like to go ahead and move a do pass. I think we already had a second on that, but Councilor Borrego.
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay, thank you. So if we can go ahead and take a vote on that, Ms. Hinojos, Mr. Waterman, I think that if we go ahead and move and see some progress happening, then we'll be able to defer when the time comes at the next council meeting.
When is the next council meeting?
Staff, can you confirm when this is going to,
May 17th, I believe.
Madam Chair, just if it's coming out of a recommendation of committee, it's not going to go to the 17th, but it'll go to the first meeting in June.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Waterman. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, and perhaps Ms. Yara, should we move a no rec or a do pass?
That's the pleasure of the committee. I think the motion is for a recommendation of a do pass that would go to the first meeting in June, where somebody else could move a deferral or other action.
You want to go with my thing is, Councilor Pena, that this has been 9 years. It's been 6 to 7 years since it was deemed inhabitable. It might not still be movable. It needs to be looked into.
Ma'am, it really was checked.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moya. This is something that we need to have our code enforcement and planning department look into, so that way we can be apprised of it. So I'm fine with sending it with no recs. We can go ahead and just be on top of it at that point, if that's what you would like. But I do think that we need to move it forward, and hopefully we will see some progress, because nobody deserves to be in any of these circumstances through hardship.
Madam Chair, I agree with Councilor Pena that we should do a no recommendation, because this is not in any of our districts. And I would really be interested in knowing what the city councilor from this district, what her or his.
Councilor Briggs, it's in my district, ma'am.
Oh, it's in your district.
In my district.
Oh, okay, got it.
My district. I would like to move it without recommendation, please.
Okay, second.
Thank you. Ms. Hinojos, if you will take a vote.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item K, R153. I will be moving this for Councilor Davis. Councilor Davis has R153, a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 400 Macias Street Southeast within the city limits of Albuquerque. New Mexico is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety that it is to be required to be removed. I move a do pass. Counselor Sena, thank you for the second. Mr. Metzger, if you'll give us an update.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this property has been posted substandard for about 4.5 years. It's had 27 calls for service and about $7,300 worth of liens are on it right now. It's boarded. APD is constantly getting calls about these properties. We would recommend that it move to full council with a recommendation of a due pass.
Counselors, any questions?
Madam Chair, I would just like to notify you and the committee that Mr. Sergio Cano is on the line if there's questions for him.
Counselor Sena, I see that you have a question. Can we go ahead and hear from Mr. Cano? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moya, if you'll move him in.
Hello?
Hello, sir. If you would like to speak about the Mesilla property, you are with the Finance Government Operations Committee, and if you can keep it to about 1.5 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Okay, my name is Sergio Cano. My son, my father is the actual owner of the property. He is getting older, and it's harder, for him with his diabetes and all. I do try to keep the property clean. I go every week to 2 weeks to check and clean it. But due to a lot of people, passing, it's a tough area, so it's hard to keep people out of there. We do have the intention of fixing the property. It's just difficult because I'm working full time, and we haven't found contractors that we can afford yet. But I would really want to find out, what is the purpose of this meeting? This is my first time on any property issues, so I don't know. I really don't know what to do.
Sure. Thank you for asking, Mr. Cano. I'm sorry to hear about your family and some health issues with that. Did you say this is your son's property?
It is my father's
Your father.
property.
Okay.
I'm calling on his behalf because he doesn't understand English too well.
Thank you for doing that. So the process right now is, this property is being discussed at the committee meeting where code enforcement gives us their proposed recommendation based off of the history of going out to the property and contact with the property owner over the time frame that's been explained. So right now, the counselor that has sponsored this is wanting it to go to full council for discussion on whether or not the city should take down the property or not. And so that's what we're discussing now, is how we should move it to full council. I would be willing to move this without recommendation since Councilor Davis is not here. And then we can discuss it at full council at the next council meeting, the first one in June.
What would that mean specifically with full council?
It's amongst all 9 counselors instead of just the committee that right now is 4 counselors. So we will all be able to discuss this property with every one of the counselors present, at which time you can also sign up for public comment. Mr. Moya, are we able to follow up and help give some guidance to the best process so that we don't lose anybody in the mix here between now and the next council meeting?
Madam Chair, yes, and Mr. Metzger can probably answer as well, but the planning department does keep in touch with these owners as the bill goes through the process and notifies them when the meetings are and gives them the Zoom links.
Thank you. And Mr. Metzger, I think if you can help us make sure that they are in attendance if we do pass this recommendation, but I see Councilor Pena and then Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Metzger, is there any way that you can have somebody from your staff who speaks Spanish talk to the owner before the next meeting as well? So, you get clarity and find out what the situation is, because I do support the no recommendation. As you all know, I tend to not vote on these. This is why I was trying to get Councilor Bassan to go with the no rec previous because I want to support what she's trying to do because I understand, how it impacts communities. So I would really, like to do that. And then maybe somebody from the administration can tell us where we're at with that program that we're trying to get developed to help support people to keep them in their homes, because, it just really sounds like these are folks who maybe don't have the ability to refinance, do certain things like that in order to be able to maintain home ownership. So I'd like to know where the progress of that is. If anyone has any idea, maybe Director Pierce, someone from the Mayor's Conference Room.
Excuse me to interrupt. I just want to be heard, and let you guys know that we do intend to fix the property, and I just don't really know how to go about this.
Madam Chair, Sergio, is that your name? Cano?
Yes.
Okay, so what's happening right now is you're in the midst of the process and you're at the tail end of the process. And right now it's in the council committee. Once it moves to full council, that's going to give you just a few weeks. So you and your father and your family are going to have to come up with a plan ahead of time and reach out to Mr. Metzger and really be able to identify either resources or what you can do to get this house in order between now and then. So I am definitely going to have Mr. Metzger give you a call and have someone who can speak Spanish with your father, the actual property owner, so that it can help him to navigate and understand exactly where he's at. Because if your father does not understand the process or where he's at right now, that's something as a city that we should not be doing. So anyway, with that, Madam Chair, if I can get Director Pierce to answer that question.
Yes, Director Pierce. You still there, Director Pierce? We missed the window. Oh no, there she is.
Thank you, Council Chairman Bassan and Councilor Pena. Let me reach out to and work with Angelo for homeowners. There is one contractor, and the name is just escaping me, but I will come up with, and I'll reach out with Angelo to talk with him about this potential resource.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could follow up with that, during this last CIP cycle, we had actually appropriated some money to try to develop a program that helps people in this similar situation to maintain home ownership. So I don't know if Director Yara or Isaac, I seen you open up your screen. If you can kind of just let me know where we're at, because my whole thing on not voting for these is really to try to identify that money. And thanks to my colleagues on council, we were able to do that. But I think we really need to get this program in place sooner than later, because it seems that more and more of these are coming up, and maybe it's due to, the pandemic and lack of resources and no jobs. So anyway, Ms. Yara.
Yes, Madam Chair and councilors. So as we move through the budget, the FY22 budget process, you'll see that there is a resolution to accept the ARPA funds from the federal government. As you had mandated previously in the CIP bill, there is, I believe $3.3 million allocated for home rehab programs that would help people like these stay in their homes, get these repairs done. I would guess that the administration hasn't had the chance to really fully develop what that would look like, but hopefully the council will continue to approve those funds and we can work towards that.
Okay.
I don't know if Mr. Padilla has anything to add, or I think that's where we're at.
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, that is true. We'd have to wait until action is taken on the ARPA, and we expect it to be on May 17th. At the latest would be May 26th. And then family and community can fully develop a plan to use those funds.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Madam Chair.
course, no, thank you for advocating, Counselor. I think that that's key, so I appreciate that. Counselor Sena and then Counselor Borrego.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that was one of my points that Councillor Pena noted, really making sure that the family has language accessible resources so that they do understand this process. I know that this house has been in this process for quite some time. And the next item on the agenda is, I believe it's next door by the same property owners as well. So really being able to avoid some of that miscommunication for both of these would be really helpful as well. And really thinking through, again, how we do this. I know that this is not something that councillors really want to vote on. None of us do, but really intervening in this process so that properties that have great bones and great structures, and to also think about how generations get some of that equity as well is important. So I just hope, I know that all of these individuals that work at code enforcement try to do their best, but I hope that the family, not just the father, but the son that's here, can really look through the process and understand it before getting to council, and maybe getting a better update so that they also know what the process is like once we get to council. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Counselor Borrego?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the counselors. It's really difficult to envision if this is moving forward at our probably June meeting, early June, if we're really going to have an answer regarding those programs. And this is one of those that could fall through the cracks. And it's really concerning to me because, people, the last thing we want to do is put people out of their homes. How long, Mr. Metzger, has these two property, this property and then the following property sort of been on your radar? I'm just curious.
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, it's been 4.5 years at these. They're fourplexes. They're not single family residences. They're two fourplexes that have been 4.5 years substandard.
Mr. Metzger, if you can just get with Mr. I forgot his last name, Sergio, because I really think that there is a barrier here in terms of understanding, that the council, Councilor Pena said it earlier, is we're at the tail end of this, and he's just asking, what is happening, and it doesn't seem like there's clarity. 4 years is a long time, but somewhere in this mix, there hasn't been a clear path provided for these owners, or if there has, there's been some misunderstanding regarding that. So, and likely we'll take a vote on this in June. And then what? These are individuals that don't seem to have been clear about the city process somehow. So, and as Councilor Pena said earlier, there's probably going to be more and more of these as COVID comes forward. But before we start the program, and now, there may be a gap in there. We could lose some of these individuals. They could lose their homes. And that is really, really very concerning to me, or their investments. So, I don't know. I don't know how we move forward. I guess we just have to move forward with the process that we have. But I think to get this information out to the public, to individuals that have language barriers and so on, is very concerning.
Director Pierce?
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. And also wanted to go back. I wanted to clarify. What the program I was thinking about was HomeWise, but in this instance, that wouldn't necessarily help him because he's a current homeowner. Those are new homeowners. So HomeWise is a fabulous program, but I do appreciate the conversation. I just wanted to really clarify. So Angelo, I don't have a easy answer for our community member that's here, except the conversation council has had about this new potential dollars for home repair. I do agree there is a gap in our community.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Metzger, when you send out these notices and they happen to be Spanish speakers or any other language, do you send them in English? Have you ever sent one in Spanish?
Madam Chair, Councillor Pena, they are sent in English, and we have had contact at the very beginning of this process with the individual and let him know that this could be forthcoming and to be looking out and to work with us, at which point we have not heard from the owner at all. So we went ahead and moved forward. We were trying to work with him in the beginning and then just kind of fell off.
Yeah, so there's something that we really need to address, because even if it's 4.5 years and somebody's sending you something in a foreign language and you don't know what you're reading, or the magnitude of what you're reading. So this is, definitely, you guys do an outstanding job, but this is definitely something that we've overlooked. So I think we need to make sure that now any communication you have with him moving forward, if you can please get it translated into Spanish. I think City Council, I'm sure you guys do, but City Council does have translation as well. So if you can do that in your communication with him, if you can have a Spanish speaker speaking with him, I think that would be a great start. So thank you, Mr. Metzger, for all your work, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pena. Councillor Borrego?
I was just going to add to that and just say that it's possible that Mr. Metzger, if you could also work with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, they may be able to help in terms of the translations, because I know that not every, Councillor Sena and I have talked a little bit about this, should every office have but I know Office of Equity and Inclusion can help the planning department provide some of those translations.
Madam Chair, Councillor Borrego, we will definitely reach out to them and see how they can assist us with this issue.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comments? All right, so we're going to take a vote on moving this without recommendation. Ms. Hinojos.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item L is 154. This is also for Councillor Davis. This is the other fourplex that Mr. Metzger was talking about. It's a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 404 Mesilla Street Southeast within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. For the sake of our earlier discussion, I'm going to move this without recommendation.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Pena, Councillor Sena. Any questions? And maybe an update from Mr. Metzger on this. Councillor Sena, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to talk about this on the earlier item as well, but if once this goes to council, if we can also ensure that we have interpreters ready in case they're ready to address the council as well.
I think that's great. Thank you, Councillor Sena, and I'm assuming council staff is making note of that. Mr. Metzger, do you want to give us just another update on this property? I'm willing to assume that it's probably similar, but let's hear it for the record so that we can treat it individually as it deserves.
Madam Chair, councilors, you are correct. They were posted pretty much on the same in the same month when they became substandard. This one has 32 calls for service the past year and around $6,000 in liens on it, and it continues to just be a nuisance for the neighborhood.
And how long has it been? 4 years approximately?
4.5 years.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Metzger. Counselor Borrego?
He just answered my question, Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, counselors? Okay, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll take a vote, please.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Hinojos. So we will move on to agenda item M, R155. I am going to move this for Counselor Benton. It is a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 1804 High Street Southeast within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. At this time, I'm going to move a do pass. Second from Counselor Borrego, thank you. Mr. Metzger, if you'll give us an update on this property for Counselor Benton's district, that would be great.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this property has been on our radar and been posted substandard for over 6 years now. There's $4,600 in liens, and it continues to just to deteriorate in the condition that it's in, requiring the code enforcement to move forward with demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Do you have in your notes how many times the property owners have been contacted or attempts have been made?
Madam Chair, what I can tell you is that we send notices whenever there's a lien placed on it for them to give us a call. We send notices for these types of meetings. You know, we send notice for whenever there's a change to the property, whether it's an amended notice in order or there's some new violations. We do send them notice, and we have not heard for quite some time from the owners.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Any questions or comments, counselors? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Counselor Borrego,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
No.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-1 vote.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item N is R156. Counselor Sena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R156 is a nuisance substandard dwelling or structure in need of abatement at 832 Estancia Drive Northwest within the city limits of Albuquerque, New Mexico is so ruined, damaged, and dilapidated as to be a menace to the public comfort, health, peace, or safety, and that it is to be required to be removed. I move a do pass.
I will second that. Mr. Metzger, if you want to give an update, and then we'll go back to counselors.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we've had this one only 2 years and 10 months. However, it's been a magnet for activity. We already do have $12,000 in liens on that property in the 2 years. There are constant break-ins, constant illegal dumping, and you know that's draining the resources for the city when we're having solid waste go out and secure and clean this property. You know, the owner, we've had no contact with this owner. So, you know, again, we send multiple letters. Every time we get a lien on that property, a letter goes out informing them to contact us. Their property has a lien on it, and we have not heard from them.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Counselors, any questions? Counselor Sena?
Well, now I'm going to be asking this question, I feel like every property, because now that we're learning that not every notice is being issued in multiple languages, I hope that more attempts are made to do so. I know that it's a big issue that I've raised with multiple departments in terms of our language access. I hope that we can proceed forward. You know, it's our duty to, especially if it's, you know, resource that people are going to within City Hall. We're obligated to do it in the language that everyone can understand. So I hope for especially this property, since we're hearing that we've made multiple attempts, that more attempts are made in multiple languages as well. But for me, I do hope that the property owner will get back to us and maybe moving it to council will move them to come forward. I know that that has happened a few times, even within my own district on another property. So that's why I'm going to move it forward to council, and of course, really push that the property owner gets back with us. But again, that we make every attempt in multiple languages as well to ensure that the people do know the process and understand what's happening. So thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sana. Councillor Borrego?
Yeah, my question, and I know Mr. Metzger mentioned that they've contacted the property owner many times, and I forgot the number, but it sounded like it was a lot. And my question is, how, when, you know, you keep contacting a property owner and you don't hear back from them, is there an alternate way of contacting them, or is there a phone call, or is there any other means that we try to use? And I know we get that information from the assessor's office, but you know, there's got to be a reason why people are not responding when you've called them, you know, 20 or 30 times, or you not called them, but sent them letters. That's really odd. Unless they're in some sort of litigation or something, you know, why are they not responding? Any comments, Mr. Metzger?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, we actually run a title search for every demolition, which goes through the title and gives us, you know, as some of you know, the title search will give us the contact information to make sure if there's any liens on it. We go through that looking for any other means to contact them. And if there isn't any other contact information in there, the only thing we really can do is go by what that title search says is who's the owner on record.
So is this property owner even aware that this is on our radar, on our agenda?
Madam Chair, it's been posted substandard. We've sent out the notices about the meeting that it is substandard. We've sent that there's liens on a substandard property to their property that is substandard. You know, if they are responsible owners, they should know that it is substandard.
And there is a sign that's placed in front of the property, right? Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, yes.
And do you also notify it in the paper by any chance?
Madam Chair, Councilor Borrego, once it passes council, we do put it in the newspaper, in the journal.
I guess that would be our legal notification then, that would be in the paper. So there are at least 3 notifications that go out as the letter to the public, the sign at the property, and then a legal notice in the paper.
Madam Chair, that is correct, along with the original notice and order that does get sent out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Metzger.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Ms. Hinojos, if you'll go ahead and take a vote, please.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
No.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
It passes on a 3-1 vote.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item O. R158 is approving renewal awards from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the 2021 Continuum of Care Grant and providing an appropriation to the Department of Family and Community Services beginning in fiscal year 2021. I move a do pass.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Borrego, Councillor Sena, and I see a couple people on here. I'm going to start with Carol, Director Pierce, all the names in my head.
Thank you, Councillor President Bassan. We would urge the recommendation. This is important. We've got our division manager Heidi Schultz on this. This is the important continuum of care legislation for our homeless programs, and we would urge the committee's support on this.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz, do you want to start next? Do you want to say anything?
I want to concur with our director Carol that this is an important program. It's the continuum of care, and this is appropriating $3.3 million for our permanent supportive housing programs, rapid rehousing programs, and one transitional program. And we do apply for this every year competitively. Due to the COVID pandemic, we received an automatic renewal from HUD based on our performance, and of course, based on the fact that because of the pandemic, we could not, HUD did not have the NOFA for us to apply. So yes, so I urge Madam Chair and committee members to please pass this, vote yes, to be approved by the whole council at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. I would not want to skip over Ms. Montoya, who took the time to be here as well. Do you have anything that you would like to add and say?
Hi, Madam. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councilors. No, I'm actually really here for the next agenda item, but thank you.
All right, well, I will come back to you then. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Hinojos, if you'll please take a vote.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
We will move on to agenda item P is R159, adopting the 2021 Action Plan and Program Investment Summary for the expenditure of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Home Investment Partnerships Program, HOME, and Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG funds, providing an appropriation to the Department of Family and Community Services for 2021 U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD entitlement funds. I move a do pass. Okay. I got a second from Councilor Borrego and Sena. Thank you so much. All right, well, I'm going to switch it up. Ms. Montoya, do you want to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors. I am just here to urge your support to pass this resolution. This is our annual allocation from HUD for CDBG and home funds and ESG. We fund several different programs, public facility programs, affordable housing programs, and public service programs, and different homeless programs. And I'm just here to answer any questions if you all have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Sena, I see your hand up. May I go to Director Pierce real quick? And then, okay, Director Pierce, if you want to add anything, and then we'll go to Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to add, I think this was one of those silver linings. I really appreciate Division Manager Montoya's work on this, as we do need to get public input on this before this plan is put together. And I think the little silver lining in COVID, we had a little bit more participation because people zoomed in literally. Really appreciate that when the public is involved in that way, and appreciate all her work on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know if this question is for Ms. Montoya or Director Pierce, but I know, I of course support the funding and the program, but I noticed as part of it, as to why this project is needed, it was noted that the funds are to also look at improving the housing stock in Albuquerque in terms of increasing the affordable housing opportunities. I mean, we just heard and went through a plethora of houses that are going to be condemned. And for me, it's definitely a shame that we have to just condemn it. A lot of times these houses are vacant, and it's something that I know Councilor Pena and all the councilors are really trying to think through as to how we can save these properties, whether it's putting it into our affordable housing stock or not. But what is the plan as part of this to do that? Director Pierce, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair, as well as Councilor Sena. We appreciate that conversation, and I know we've had initial conversations on what needs to be done on existing housing stock as a piece of the puzzle, not just new development. But I am going to hand it to Division Manager Montoya to lend a little bit more light on that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sena, and other councilors, Borrego and Pena. Yes, we have had discussions. This is really high on our priority list to develop some sort of homeowner rehab program. It's been needed. We used to have one in the past, and we've been working with the Department of Senior Affairs moving forward for a smaller homeowner rehabilitation program, a minor home repair program. And then we do know that we are getting some ARPA funds, some home funds funding coming down, and we are planning to develop a homeowner rehab program with that. Unfortunately, I've been listening to some of the conversations with Mr. Metzger and you all in regards to these homes that are substandard. And, you know, with some of our federal funding, there's a lot of red tape and requirements to use that funding for some of these houses. And unfortunately, most of the time it needs to be a homeowner occupied home to use some of this federal funding. So we may need to find other funding sources if we want to address some of these substandard housings, because like I said, they do need to be owner occupied when federal funding goes into these homes.
Thank you. That's a good note to remind us on. Councilor Sena, do you have follow-up?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, and thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Montoya, for that clarity. I think, you know, I quite understand that, and I just hope that as part of these funds, we're also taking that into consideration of how we're incorporating more housing stock, whether that's land purchasing or, you know, just thinking that through. And, you know, I think it was pretty evident through the previous conversations that you also witnessed. A big struggle of that is also language access. So I do hope that as we think through some of these programming, that it's also language accessible as well, so that people, before it gets to the tail end, as Councilor Pena noted, of how these houses are condemned, and it's been vacant for so long, we hope that we can intervene before that. I'm really looking forward to the plans as we're discussing them. But again, hope that it's also followed up with different criteria. And I'm really glad to hear that there's community input as well, because I think this is where we can get a lot of solution ideas, or really how a community has actually gone through this process themselves and where the barriers are at. So I just appreciate that and really grateful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so just to follow up kind of on my no votes on some of these things, and I just really want to thank my colleagues, all the councilors, because they know that I understand the need to have some of these homes demolished because they're such a nuisance to the community. They allow me to do this just in protest, and I don't ever want to hinder any of the demolitions, but they allow me to do this just in protest until we can actually all get together to identify a means on how to be able to, you know, maintain home ownership and having a program for rehab. That way, when we have people who there's language barriers, there's addiction, there's mental health issues that, or a lack of employment, that, you know, really can't afford to, or maybe health-wise can't afford to do the necessary repairs or get refinanced or whatever the case may be, so that we can make sure that we at least don't put people out, that we actually have a program that some people can qualify for. And to me, at that point, then we'll be to a point where if they still can't do that, well then, you know, there's no other alternative. But I just want to say thank you to, you know, all my colleagues, the ones on this committee in particular, knowing that, you know, I'm just kind of doing it out of silent protest, maybe on behalf of all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Councilor Borrego?
I just wanted to thank Director Pierce and Deputy Director Montoya I know that there's a lot of work that goes into developing these action plans and programs. And CDBG, we're very blessed that we have that funding source available. It's, you know, it's hard to determine what our priorities are when we have so many priorities, especially after coming out of COVID. But, you know, I've been involved in CDBG before, and it's good to know that we're trying to come up with the highest level of priority sources and priorities for the city that, you know, are targeted. And especially when I drive home every night from downtown, and I drive down Second and think about, you know, like last night, I think I left downtown at about 9 o'clock, and there were still people on the street, sleeping on the street, tents on the street. And for people who don't come downtown all the time and see that, you know, the city is trying to address a lot of these issues, you know, it's just that we have so many priorities. And how do we sort of, you know, get through all of them to determine what is the highest priority? You know, I don't envy your jobs at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Borrego, Madam President. Any other questions or comments, councilors? So with that, let's go ahead, Ms. Hinojos, and we'll take a vote on R159.
Councilor Borrego,
Yes.
Councilor Pena,
Yes.
Councilor Sena,
Yes.
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Councilor Pena, do you have anything?
Madam Chair, yes, I was going to ask the staff if we wanted to make changes in terms of that ARPA money with the 3.3 million and including the new rehab program as part of this decade plan. Can we do that with this due pass?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite get that.
I think Director Pierce knows what I'm talking about. So
Okay, sorry.
I think I do, but let me make sure. Thank you, Councilor President Pena and Chair Bassan. I do think what you're saying, because we're with the ARPA money that is not HUD related, there is more flexibility with that money. And I think what we're putting our thinking caps on is how can we be as flexible as we can, because as our manager Montoya said, we get a little bit more constricted with some of our federal dollars. And I think, Councilor Pena, what you're saying is, hey, since you all are going to have, our department's going to have this opportunity with ARPA money, could we use some of that money flexibly with this action plan that we just are promoting for affordable housing? So I'm going to answer, but then Monica's going to correct me if I'm wrong. I think what the plan that you just approved is for our federal dollars, our HUD federal dollars. And that's where we got input from the public. And then we're very looking forward to what council is thinking about this ARPA money with money for rehab and fixing homes, of which we can do some other flexible thinking with that. We'll probably need to do some RFPs and build those programs, or do some with senior affairs, but there may be more than that. So that is actually distinct from what you just approved. It's a different pot of money, but it gives us an opportunity. So that was a very long-winded answer, but Monica, anything you would correct me on or add to? Okay.
No, I think you're exactly right, Carol.
Okay.
thank you, Director. Yes, and so I was just wondering, though, within the ARPA money, if there's some flexibility, should it be at minimum, even if it's not money that's dedicated, but should at minimum it have some reference to it, so that if there's an opportunity to use some of the federal dollars in that manner, that we could. Does that make sense?
Councilor Pena, understand what, I think we can move ahead very much so with the ARPA money in a flexible way.
Yes.
And we can come back and discuss that. I think we have more restrictions on HUD, of which this plan that just is going to move forward has more restrictions. So I don't think we can, I think we want to have a vast menu on our options for housing and use our different funding sources for that. But I don't think I'm maybe following your answering your last question.
I think you did, because I know there's input, there's the RFP process, there's the money that goes, and it's federal dollars. Everybody already has their contract on what to do. We're just kind of solidifying it. I was just wondering if within the resolution, there could just be some reference to say that we're, you know, in the process of developing this new program for rehab, and, you know, just language, because I know that all the contractual stuff has already been done with the nonprofits. And I'm not sure. So that was just my question. If not, it didn't really, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I was trying to, you know, meld the two with just language.
Okay.
So Monica, do you know kind of what I'm talking about?
Councilor Pena, I believe I do, but I don't, are you talking about this resolution that's on the table right now to include that language, or are you talking about the
To
next?
include that language, that's what I was saying. So I know we did a do pass, so it's going to go on to council, but I was wondering at that time, could we do an amendment that just references, it's not part of anybody's contractual obligations that are in here, but as part of the action plan, have some type of statement in there about home rehabilitation. And I think Miss Yada has her hand up and she may know what the heck I'm talking about.
So
Yada?
I'm sorry.
Director Yada, if you want to go ahead and.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Pena. I think what you're getting at is that should we include some language in this current resolution for the action plan that would lay out a process for using that ARPA money as you've discussed. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I believe that HUD likes these resolutions to be pretty on point with what they're asking for. And so I think if you make any modifications to this current resolution you just move forward, it would probably
okay.
Put a wrench in that process a little.
So you answered my question. We could, but it would muddy the waters.
Yes.
So okay, cool.
Yes, for this one today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you all so much. There being no further business, this FGO meeting is now adjourned.
Counselor.